Do you trust the people you are talking with? Do you trust the information that they tell you? Do you trust that they are listening actually when you talk? Trust is the basis of communication among people, also among things, if we're talking about the Internet of Things. Hi, this is Gary Minchell, and I'm back with another podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Ignition from Inductive Automation, the HMI SCADA solution from my friends in California. And this podcast is also brought to you by ARC Advisory Group, who is sponsoring its 23rd Annual Industry Forum in Orlando in February. There are links to both of these fine organizations on my website, themanufacturingconnection.com. I invite you to check out the website and check out the companies that are there. I bring up this idea of trust because in November I went to Munich, Germany with Siemens and a whole group of media and analyst type people. And the topic of the trip was cybersecurity and Siemens initiated Charter of Trust. And we talked a lot about cybersecurity initiatives. The Charter of Trust is a group of companies that have come together and signed on. It's not a standards organization, and some of them, a couple of media guys were a little bit frustrated with what is it really, but it's basically an understanding of companies who are going to promote ways of promoting trusted communication in the Internet of Things and in data communications in general. And it was very interesting. Among the companies we visited, NXP Semiconductors, and we talked about autonomous vehicles, among other things. TUV Sud has a new cybersecurity practice now. It's well known as a safety organization. And those of you not familiar with TUV, if you're American, just think in terms of UL, and there would be some similarity there. Maybe not perfect, but similar. And that was interesting. We talked quite a bit about cybersecurity, and of course, they're part of the Charter of Trust. And we also went to IBM, the IBM Watson IoT Center in Munich, talking about, once again, cybersecurity, Internet of Things, and took a tour of the demo and the story that IBM can tell about its IoT practices as it brings in customers from around Europe into its center. It's one of three Watson IoT centers that IBM has globally. Very interesting. Siemens is doing some interesting things. We also went to Nuremberg and went to SPS Drive's IPC show and spent about, I don't know, what was it, hour and a half or so seeing a small part of the Siemens stand at the show. They take up pretty much an entire building right now. They have so much stuff. But they're showing a lot of initiative in software and hardware and cybersecurity and networking, Internet of Things. They just keep putting things together. In America, they've shown a lot of revitalization of the company over the last several years, partly, I'm sure, because of the German companies coming over here, BMW having, for example, a plant in America and others, and also Chrysler being purchased by Daimler, part of the Daimler Group for a while, and getting a big European influence there. So they're doing a lot of marketing. They go to conferences, they hold conferences all over, a lot of renewed marketing and enthusiasm from the group down in Georgia. So I'm interested in these, and I've worked for various kinds of companies that have done very well and done very poorly, and so I'm always curious about how people put together these organizations and what they do to succeed or what they do to fail and so on, and always intrigued by the whole thing. Company that's also intriguing me right now is Emerson, and I would say they're doing it quietly because they're not shouting from the rafters or anything like that. But I just got a press release that they have acquired a company called iSolutions. That's a data consulting company, and you think Emerson and data, but very quietly they started with this idea of top quartile performance and how they can get their customers to have top quartile performance. And that's all well and good. And they're deeper into the Internet of Things. Don't think of them as a valve company or a process control company. Emerson is doing a lot of things, and they're quietly putting together, one acquisition after another, and growing, and doing a lot of cool stuff in the area I'm interested in, which is connecting the enterprises from the plant floor for various many benefits that we talk about in other places. One company not showing, well, let me go to this way. One company not showing anything would be GE. Just in at the end of last week was a press release. Now, we all knew that GE's digital division was on the block. That's been announced. It's well known. GE's trying to sell its digital. Well, evidently there are no buyers. And I can personally understand that, as I have evaluated the situation and the products and so on. I'm not surprised that they couldn't find a buyer. They probably wanted too much money. Probably nobody could digest it. Or people would say, why do I need, prophecy and predicts? I've already got stuff. So I don't know. But anyway, they spun it off into a separate company. It's still like a GE wholly owned company, but it'll have its own board of directors. GE corporate will just own all the shares in this company, and that's a bit weird. But we'll see what happens there as that progresses, and we'll see if they show any growth. They're saying it's $1 billion company, but I'm willing to bet that an awful lot of that $1 billion was quote unquote internal to GE sales, and that'll be its biggest customer. We'll see how that plays out. We'll see how GE plays out as in a great Wall Street Journal article at the end of last week with an analysis, but it just kind of reinforced what a lot of us have already heard, that a lot of the problems were just the way they did financing, the way they reported financial numbers, the way they used financial numbers for management, the wrong numbers. And I'm a proponent of management accounting for managers, and then financial accounting for the finance people. Not two sets of books, two different ways of reporting. So you can't manage from Wall Street numbers. Let's just be frank. So anyway, that's tripped up a lot of people and a lot of GE executives, and it's quite interesting. Of course, a former GE executive who was a glory boy for a while and moving right along had gone to ABB. And then ABB replaced him as CEO. ABB has made some acquisitions, and on the one hand, by B&R, and they strengthened their discrete manufacturing. So I see all these European companies trying to balance portfolios of discrete and process and to compete with Siemens. But ABB just divested its power grid group. That thing has been sucking swamp water for a while. They found a buyer. And so that's an interesting development on that side on the corporate world. I think looking outside of the traditional control and automation companies is worthwhile. I've been spending quite a bit of time doing some work with both Hewlett Packard Enterprise and Dell Technologies. And Dell's been a little quiet. Dell just had some financial news where they're going to use VMware stock that they got with the acquisition of EMC some time ago, and Dell is going to wind up going public, which is a good thing, and that will help, I hope, solidify the financial picture there. But Hewlett Packard Enterprise is getting interesting. They've taken some very, very powerful compute products in their server technology, and under the leadership of Tom Bradich, Dr. Tom, as they call him internally, Dr. Tom has put together an Internet of Things group or an edge computing group, and has taken this powerful compute platform and has been putting together some rather interesting stuff. And they just introduced a whole new line of products in that group, and there's a lot of power there, and there's a lot of stuff, and you could dump some pretty powerful software in there and do some very interesting things. And I think that you would be wise to take a look at companies like HPE and Dell and and see if maybe you couldn't use a more powerful compute platform for many of your industrial use cases. I know that the HPE Edgeline uh, product, compute product, with IO and a lot of networking capability and a lot of internal storage and communication capability, has been sold to companies to put on oil platforms, for example. They can be pretty rugged and put out on a rig and left unattended for a while. So I think that bears watching. If you're putting together some systems, maybe you should consider that as part of your mix, looking outside of the traditional people, and and considering how you could use these powerful compute platforms and expand out. One last company is I wound up actually doing a roundup of companies here. I didn't go to the Rockwell Automation Fair for the first time in years. Actually, the first one I went to was in '97, so it's been a long time. Just couldn't make it to Philadelphia, but but which was interesting. But reading the news and talking to people and getting on the press, the media site and so on. I guess the biggest thing I saw there that concerns me had to do with a product coming out of their strengthened partnership with PTC and the ThingWorx platform for Internet of Things, and they're going to continue to pursue that. Whether that product is going to get their $1 billion back they invested in PTC remains to be seen. We'll see. We'll see what happens with that whole scenario. But that was as far as I could tell. I didn't read anything else coming out of Rockwell that concerned my area of connecting everything. So anyway, a roundup of a number of interesting happenings. We'll see, the people growing and being acquisitive and aggressive in the market, and then some people retrenching and some people divesting. So we'll see how this all plays out and how that helps us run our plants and our companies better. So this is Gary Mitchell, and I hope this is a trusted communication. And have a good day. And once again, this podcast is brought to you by Ignition from Inductive Automation for your HMI SCADA needs. And also remember the 23rd Annual Industry Forum coming up with ARC Advisory Group. Thank you for listening. Bye.